Xiao's mandibles snapped shut, his compound eyes locked on the flickering tactical display with a mix of dread and disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? Or just begging for a quick death?" he demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. The Vorith commander, tentacles squirming in irritation, shot back. "They're just humans. Primitive mammals who've barely stumbled into space a century ago. I've tripled your fee already, quadruple it, and I still wouldn't touch this contract with a 10-meter pole." Hurik Tal let out a nervous chitter, thrusting a clawed limb toward the holographic footage. "Look at them. No, really look at them." The display showcased human special operations forces tearing through a brutal desert world, their movements a chilling blend of liquid grace and raw, predatory menace. These warriors were armed to the teeth, carrying enough firepower to make even a Kran war beast feel like it forgot its gear at home. Can you imagine the sheer audacity? I've dug into their combat doctrine. To pressed on, his tone heavy with awe. "Do you even know what those symbols on their armor mean? Skulls. Human skulls. They're practically shouting death from their chests. What kind of species does that?" His voice trembled, half fear, half fascination. The commander scoffed, tentacles flicking dismissively. "A backward species trying to seem scary. Their psychological tricks are crude, nothing more." "Crude?" KX Tal's antennae thrashed wildly, nearly smacking the display. "Oh, let me tell you about crude. These humans you're so quick to brush off? They built powered armor because they saw it in some goofy entertainment vids. They cooked up plasma weapons just because they thought they looked cool in their games. Their whole military machine runs on one question. Wouldn't it be awesome if?" His words dripped with incredulity. "Can you even wrap your head around that?" The commander's tentacles froze, his bravado faltering. "You're exaggerating. You have to be." "I wish." Xiao shot back, his voice rising. "Do you know what they name their elite squads? Ghost Recon, Shadow Raiders. Their gunships? Black Death, Angel of Destruction. Their carriers honor ancient warlords and conquerors. Sure, plenty of species flex their might, but humans? They're on a whole other level." "No, you're missing it." Call cut in, mandibles clicking so fast they blurred. "They don't do this to scare anyone. They do it because it's fun." Some human saw a massive assault transport bristling with weapons and thought, "You know what'd make this even better? Slapping some flames on the side and calling it Valkyrie's Fury. Who even thinks like that?" The tactical display flickered, now showing human special forces on a night raid. Their movements were razor-sharp, perfectly synced, and downright terrifying to witness. They glided through the shadows like specters, every step calculated, every gesture lethal. It was like watching death itself dance across the battlefield. "Look at how they move," Call exclaimed, his voice thick with unease. "Most species are good at either stealth or brute force. Humans? They flip between the two like it's nothing. 1 second, they're invisible ghosts. The next, they're unloading enough firepower to flatten a city. And get this, they're cracking jokes the whole time on their comms. Can you even imagine joking in the middle of a firefight?" The commander's tentacles paled, his confidence crumbling. "Jokes? That can't be a big deal, can it?" "Oh, really?" Karzal's tone was laced with sarcasm as he pulled up an audio file. Human voices crackled through the speakers, casual and carefree. "Hey, Jenkins, what's the difference between a Vorith battlecruiser and a target range?" "Dunno, Sarge, what?" "About 30 seconds once Anderson gets that railgun warmed up." Laughter roared over the sound of explosions, as if war was just a game to them. "Who does that?" KX Tull's antennae sagged, his voice low. "They're joking while they fight. It's unnatural. It's wrong." The commander shifted, visibly rattled. Maybe we could talk to their leaders instead?" "Their leaders?" Kirill's chittering laugh was sharp and bitter. "You mean the ones who see their most reckless, adrenaline junkie, danger-obsessed volunteers and think, 'Yep, those are the ones who get our best toys'? The ones who heard their special forces ask for orbital drop tech and said, 'Sure, let's build pods so they can surf through atmospheric reentry?'" His words hung in the air, heavy with disbelief. "They what?" The commander's voice cracked, his tentacles coiling in shock. "Oh yeah." Sal leaned in, his tone almost gleeful in its horror. "They call it riding the lightning, because why wouldn't they? Everything's a damn action movie to them. Their training sims? Indistinguishable from their video games. Their combat stimulants? They call them Go Juice. Their medtech? Stimpaks. It's like they're living in some sci-fi fantasy. Can you even picture that kind of mindset? The display shifted again, showing humans in powered armor pulling off jaw-dropping maneuvers, their bodies enhanced by neural links and synthetic muscles. And don't get me started on their enhancement programs. Sal's voice rose, almost frantic. Most species pick biology or tech. Humans? They went, why choose? Let's do both and make it epic. They've got soldiers who sync directly with their weapons, process battlefield data faster than our top AI, and can sprint for days without a break. And what do they do with all that power? They hold contests to see who can pull off the most insane stunts in live combat. Who even dares to think like that? The commander's skin had turned a sickly shade, his composure shot. They've got to have some weaknesses, right? Oh, sure. Sal's tone was mocking now. They're reckless, they improvise like crazy, and they push their gear to the breaking point. But here's the kicker. They know these are flaws, and they've turned them into strengths. They train for gear failures. They practice winging it. Their doctrine even has rules for when to ignore the damn doctrine. Can you believe the nerve of these humans? That's pure madness. The commander's voice was a strained whisper, his tentacles knotted tight. Exactly. Creel's chitter was grim. And that's why I'm not touching them. Their skills are terrifying, but their enthusiasm? That's what keeps me up at night. They don't just fight, they love it. They've turned war into an art, complete with their own culture, traditions, and stupid inside jokes. How do you even fight that kind of spirit? The commander's tentacles were practically strangling each other now. Maybe we should rethink our expansion plans. Now you're getting it. Creel's voice softened, but only slightly. But here's the worst part. Those special forces we're watching? Those are their regular ones. They've got even crazier, top-secret units they don't even talk about. Can you imagine what those psychos must be like? His words sent a chill through the room. I don't want to. The commander's voice was a desperate plea. Smart move. Sal nodded. I've heard whispers about their Black Ops teams, stuff about operatives who can bend probability, step through dimensions, do things that sound like bad sci-fi. I mean, come on. Who even believes that kind of thing? Enough. The commander's tentacles were a tangled mess, his voice shaking. The contract's off. We'll find easier targets somewhere else. Good call. Coral's chitter was almost cheerful as the commander bolted. He turned back to the display, where human special forces were now practicing close-quarters combat. Their movements were a lethal ballet, precise and vicious. One soldier did a perfect backflip while firing 2 guns at once. Why? Who even needs to do that? Completely nuts, Call muttered, shaking his head. Bet they did that flip just cause it looked badass. In the background, more calm chatter played. Yo, anyone see my antimatter grenade? Check your other tactical pocket, Dave. Oh, sweet, there it is, right next to my lucky rabbit's foot. Laughter erupted again, carefree and wild. How do they stay so calm? KX Tall switched off the display with a shudder, his nerves frayed. Let someone else deal with humans. He wanted battles he could win and enemies who weren't clinically insane. Rumor had it they were tinkering with something called space ninjas now, and he really didn't want to know what that meant. Nope, not today. As he left the command center, he swore he heard faint human laughter echoing down the halls. His imagination? Maybe. But he picked up his pace anyway, his heart racing. Why take chances? Later that cycle, when pressed on why he ditched such a fat contract, Sal's answer was simple but heavy. Have you seen humans fight? They treat it like a game to see who can be the most over-the-top lethal while having a blast. They don't just fight, they choreograph it. His fellow mercenaries laughed at first, but when he showed them the footage, the room went dead silent. They didn't laugh again. Instead, they updated their contracts to exclude any ops against human special forces. Cowards? Maybe. Sal called them survivors. Because one thing was crystal clear. Human special forces were the kind of warriors who saw the impossible, grinned, and said, "Hold my beer." And everyone knew that phrase spelled doom for their enemies. Why mess with that? Remember when we bailed on that Vorith gig? Zixvac asked, his mandibles twitching with barely contained amusement, his eyes glinting in the dim light of Station 7, Echo's mercenary lounge. The place was packed, every corner buzzing with war stories and contract talk, but most were dodging the latest rumors from the Outer Rim. Nobody wanted to touch that topic. Sal's antennae flattened against his carapace, a shiver running through him. Don't remind me. Best call I ever made, even if nobody bought it back then. His voice carried a mix of pride and lingering fear. A Taurite commander's crystalline form shimmered across the room, catching the light as they called out. Speaking of humans, anyone catch the Dorax incident footage? The words landed like a grenade, and a collective shudder rippled through the crowd. Even the Quantum Hive reps, usually stone-cold, dimmed their glowing bodies. What had those humans done now? You mean when those operators decided to? Sal paused, his mandibles clicking furiously as he groped for words. What did they call it? Improvise a tactical solution using locally sourced materials. His voice dripped with disbelief. That's the polite version, a Tellarite chimed in, their crystalline frame vibrating with suppressed laughter. What they really said was, "Hey y'all, watch this." The room groaned. Those words were infamous now, a harbinger of chaos. A grizzled Marian warrior growled, their fur bristling. Those words should be banned as a psych weapon. Nothing good ever comes after them. Their voice was a low rumble, thick with dread. Sal fired up a hollow screen, the infamous Dorax footage flickering to life. The mercenaries leaned in, unable to resist, even though they knew they'd regret it. The screen showed a squad of human special forces cornered in a Dorian factory. The Dorax, silicon-based and smug, thought their heavy-duty thermal processors would stop the humans cold. Big mistake. Had they never heard of human ingenuity? Watch this, Sal chittered, pointing at a human operator grinning through their helmet's visor. This is where it goes from regular human crazy to peak human crazy. His voice was equal parts awe and horror. The footage captured the operator turning to their squad, voice crackling over the comms. Yo, you know what's in those processing units? Industrial coolant. Nah, bro, that's free-range tactical lubricant. The casual banter was chilling against the backdrop of impending chaos. Who jokes like that under pressure? What came next was a masterclass in what humans called adaptive problem-solving, and what everyone else called sheer lunacy. The operators rewired the factory's cooling system into a delivery network for combat stimulants and explosives. They weaponized the infrastructure. Can you even fathom the audacity? A Quantum Hive drone buzzed, its disbelief palpable. They turned temperature controls into a pipeline for military-grade stimulants and bombs, while joking about it being just like that one video game. Its voice was a high-pitched hum of shock. Sal nodded grimly. Yeah, something about plumbing simulator and speedrunning strats. Don't ask me to explain. His antennae twitched nervously. The footage rolled on, showing the Dorax forces realizing, too late, that their own factory had been turned against them. The humans had created what they called a base-wide party delivery system, their voices gleeful over the comms. Order up. One extra spicy combat cocktail, hot and ready. Don't forget to tip your server. Explosions roared, punctuated by their laughter. How do they stay so cheerful in a war zone? But wait, it gets worse. Zixvac cut in, his voice low and urgent. Tell M about the maintenance drones. Sal's antennae drooped, his tone heavy with resignation. They hacked the facility's maintenance drones to blast what they called entry music every time they breached a new section. Said it was for dramatic effect. Who does that? His words were a mix of exasperation and grudging respect. The holoscreen flickered, and the footage roared to life, showing maintenance drones smashing through walls like they were auditioning for a blockbuster, blaring what human archives called classical rock music. Can you believe it? The human operators, caught in the thick of a firefight, were bickering over their soundtrack like it was a casual Friday night. Really, Jenkins? Highway to hell again, one voice groaned, dripping with mock exasperation. It's a classic for a reason, Sarge. Jenkins shot back, unfazed, as if dodging enemy fire was just part of the playlist. Who even argues about music while bullets fly? And this, Sal declared, his mandibles twitching with a mix of horror and reluctant awe, is why I'm done with any contract involving humans. Who in their right mind looks at a hostile facility's guts and thinks, you know what this needs? A killer soundtrack and a jury-rigged stimulant delivery system. His voice rose, incredulous, as he gestured wildly at the screen. Can you even imagine that kind of insanity? The Tellarite commander, their crystalline form catching the lounge's dim light with a mischievous glint, chimed in. Gotta hand it to him, though. It was damn effective. Their tone was almost too amused, like they were secretly impressed. That's the whole problem. Sal snapped, his antennae thrashing. Everything they do works, no matter how batshit crazy it looks. They took basic maintenance drones, and turned them into what they called party bots, pumping combat enhancers through an enemy base. And all the while, they're cracking jokes and debating music like it's a barroom argument. His voice trembled with the weight of it all. How do you even fight that kind of reckless genius? The footage rolled on, capturing the chaotic climax of the operation. Human operators were surfing. Yes, surfing, on reprogrammed drones through corridors thick with stimulant-laced vapor, firing weapons in both hands like action movie stars. Their voices echoed over the comms, quoting their own entertainment media with gleeful abandon. Listen up, kids, don't try this at home unless you've got the proper certs. Explosions rocked the screen, punctuated by their wild laughter. Who laughs like that in a war zone? It was like they were having the time of their lives. They even made training videos after. Zixvac added, his voice hushed, almost reverent, as if he couldn't believe it himself. Called it Creative Resource Utilization 101, making the enemy's base your party venue. Can you imagine the nerve? His antennae twitched, betraying his unease. The mercenaries in the lounge sat frozen, their jaws, or equivalent appendages, practically on the floor, trying to process the sheer audacity. The grizzled Marian warrior finally broke the silence, their fur bristling as they growled. So you're telling me they pulled off this madness and turned it into a damn teaching moment? Who does that? Their voice was thick with disbelief, eyes wide with grudging respect. Sal nodded, his tone heavy. Yup, complete with peer reviews and notes on better music picks for different tactical scenarios. I heard they even got a commendation for it. His mandibles clicked rapidly, as if the words themselves were too much to handle. 3 commendations, actually, the Tellarite corrected, their crystalline form shimmering with barely contained mirth. 1 for pulling off the mission, 1 for creative resource use, and, get this, 1 for maintaining optimal morale through appropriate musical accompaniment. Can you believe they got an award for their playlist? Their voice was practically gleeful, but the room's mood darkened. The lounge fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the soft hum of data pads as mercenaries frantically updated their contracts to exclude any ops involving humans. Even the Quantum Hive reps, usually ravenous for combat data, were scrambling to rewrite their engagement protocols. Nobody wanted to tangle with that. Why risk it? The scariest part, Sal mused, his voice low and haunted, is that this is probably one of their tamer ops. Can you even imagine what their classified missions must be like? His words hung in the air like a warning, sending a shiver through the crowd. I don't want to know, several voices chorused, their fear raw and unfiltered. Who could blame them? Smart move. Sal agreed, his antennae drooping. I've heard rumors about their latest training programs, something about teaching their operators parkour. Whatever the hell that is, I'm not sticking around to find out. His voice cracked with nervous energy. The lounge emptied faster than a ship under attack, mercenaries fleeing like they'd just heard a human say, "Hold my beer." Later, Sal updated the Mercenary Guild's advisory documents, his claws trembling as he typed. If you hear human special forces laughing during combat, run like hell. If they say, "Hey, watch this," or "I've got an idea," run faster. And if they're picking music for the fight, just surrender. It's safer. The advisory passed unanimously, no debate needed. Because one thing was crystal clear, the only thing more terrifying than human special forces was human special forces having fun. And they were always having fun. Why tempt fate? Deep in the void of space, aboard a human special forces transport, a sergeant leaned back, reviewing the Dorax incident footage with their team. All right, folks, what did we learn from this insanity? The question was casual, but the team snapped to attention, grinning like kids who'd just pulled off the ultimate prank. Always scout the facility's infrastructure for tactical repurposing, one operator piped up, eyes gleaming. Music selection is key, another added, chuckling. Industrial coolant systems? Perfect for improvised delivery systems, a third chimed in, barely holding back laughter. All solid points, the sergeant nodded, a smirk tugging at their lips. But you're missing the real lesson here. The team leaned in, hanging on every word. What's that, Sarge? They asked in unison, anticipation crackling in the air. Next time, We bring better speakers, the sergeant declared, voice booming. Those drone audio systems didn't do AC/DC justice. The transport erupted in laughter, so loud it seemed to shake the hull, making nearby alien ships veer off course in a panic. Just another day for human special forces. Why wouldn't they laugh? Sal's mandibles twitched, this time with what might have been a nervous chuckle, as he stood in the mercenary lounge of Station 7 Echo. "Who's heard about the Nexus 9 situation?" he asked, his voice carrying a mix of dread and morbid curiosity. The room, usually a chaotic hub of boasts and banter, fell into a silence so heavy it felt like a funeral. What had the humans done now? "You mean the one with the Zixvax antennae curled inward," his voice barely a whisper, "the battle hymns?" The words alone sent a shudder through the crowd, and even the station's AI dimmed its lights, as if trying to nope out of the conversation. "That's the one," Sal confirmed, pulling up footage nobody wanted to see but couldn't resist. Though the humans call it Operation Dropping Beats and Taking Streets. Can you believe they named it that? His mandibles clicked rapidly, betraying his unease. The holoscreen sprang to life, showing what looked like a standard urban pacification op, until the human special forces rolled in, turning everything upside down. For context, Sal explained, his voice tense. The Nexus 9 mining colony got taken over by a hardcore sect of quantum-scale engineers. They thought they were immune to psychological warfare. Theoretical immunity. His tone dripped with sarcasm. Who'd be dumb enough to challenge humans on that front? Theoretical's the key word. A Vorath commander rumbled from their environmental tank, their voice low and wary. Nobody saw this coming. Exactly, Sal chittered, his antennae twitching. No model in the galaxy could have predicted humans turning psych warfare into, well, this. He gestured at the screen, where human operators marched through colony streets, their powered armor blaring what their databases called workout music. Each squad had picked their own theme song, like they were starring in their own action flick. Who even does that? The comms crackled. "Squad 3, this is Command. Your music's causing seismic disturbances." The response: "Sorry, Command. Can't hear you over how awesome we are." Bass drops hit, perfectly timed with explosions, shaking the screen. Can you imagine the chaos? They synced their entire assault to the music. Zixvac explained to a group of wide-eyed rookie mercenaries, his voice trembling, called it tactical rhythm optimization. Who comes up with that? His antennae drooped, overwhelmed. That's not even the worst of it, Sal added, his voice rising with a mix of fear and fascination. Check out the Central Plaza footage. The screen shifted, showing a squad of operators who decided their attack on the colony's main admin building needed a proper soundtrack. They'd hacked the emergency broadcast system to blast what they called boss battle music. Why? Because they could. "Jenkins, what the hell's K-pop doing in our tactical playlist?" one operator griped. "Cultural victory, Sarge." Jenkins shot back. "They can't fight if they're too busy figuring out the choreography." "Fair point," the sergeant conceded. "Sync the breaching charges to the chorus." The footage showed charges detonating in perfect rhythm with the music, like a deadly dance party. Who plans that? Here's where it gets wild. Sal continued, his mandibles clicking furiously. The quantum engineers, who live by probability matrices, couldn't handle the randomness of human tactics mixed with choreographed dance moves. Their systems crashed. Can you believe it? His voice was a mix of horror and admiration. "They tried to calculate the tactical value of backflips," Zixvac added, his tone solemn, like he was recounting a tragedy. "That was their first mistake." The room groaned, half in fear, half in disbelief. The footage showed the aftermath. Quantum engineers surrendering in droves or joining what they called the rhythm of tactical enlightenment. Some were even trying to mimic human dance moves, their mechanical limbs flailing awkwardly. Within 3 cycles, Sal explained, the whole colony adopted a groove-based combat doctrine. They built a religion around it, all about winning through synchronized moves and killer tunes. And the humans? They encouraged it. His voice cracked with incredulity. Who encourages that kind of chaos? A hive mind rep buzzed, stunned. Encouraged it? Really? Oh yeah. Sal nodded. They offered advanced courses called Cultural Victory, alternative approaches to combat resolution. They even published a manual, Base Drops and Hotshots, a comprehensive guide to rhythm-enhanced urban warfare. Can you imagine the gall? His antennae twitched nervously. The footage shifted, showing human instructors teaching ex-quantum engineers the art of tactical dancing. The engineers had devised complex math to optimize their moves for style points. One human voice rang out. "If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong." Another engineer asked, "But what's the tactical advantage of a spin move?" The human's reply, "Looking awesome is the advantage." The room erupted in nervous laughter. "Who thinks like that?" "The real kicker," Zixvac noted, his voice low, "is how effective it was. The colony's productivity shot up 300% after they adopted groove-based optimization protocols. Humans weaponized dance music. Can you wrap your head around that?" His antennae drooped, defeated. Sal chittered, still reeling. "They turned psych warfare into a party, and it worked better than anything else. Now the quantum engineers require all security to earn a sick moves certification before deployment. Who does that?" His voice was a mix of exasperation and grudging respect. The mercenaries watched, jaws dropped, as the footage showed the colony's new reality. Quantum engineers calculating probabilities through elaborate dance routines, security teams training to beats per minute optimization, and former rebels arguing over patrol playlist picks. "They've started competitions," Zix added, his voice hushed, called "So You Think You Can Fight." Humans judge them on combat skills and style points. Can you believe it? His antennae twitched in disbelief. And the worst part, Xal's antennae sagged, is that other colonies are picking it up. There's talk of making it an official doctrine called the Great Groove Revolution. Who starts a revolution like that? His voice was heavy with dread. The footage wrapped with a graduation ceremony for the first rhythm combat specialists, complete with a tactical dance-off. The engineers had calculated that backflips boosted combat effectiveness by 43.7%. "This is why I'm done with humans," Xal declared, his voice firm. "Who looks at a hostile quantum engineering collective and thinks, this needs a dance battle?" His mandibles clicked in frustration. "But it worked," a mercenary pointed out, their voice tinged with reluctant awe. "That's the problem," Xal snapped. "Everything they do works, no matter how insane. They turned combat into performance art, and now there's a religion built on winning through better dance moves. Can you even process that?" His voice trembled with the weight of it all. The lounge fell silent, the distant thump of bass from the human quarter sending chills down spines. Mercenaries fiddled with their gear, some adding what humans called swagger enhancement modules to their loadouts, just in case. "I heard," Zixvac whispered, "they're working on tactical rap battles for diplomacy now." Can you imagine? His voice was barely audible, laced with fear. The lounge cleared out in record time, mercenaries fleeing like they'd heard a human say, "I've got an idea." Later, Xal updated the guild's advisories again, his claws shaking. "If human special forces start playing music in combat, don't try to analyze their moves. There's no logic. They just think it's cool, and somehow, that makes it work." The advisory passed before he finished typing. Because one thing was undeniable. The only thing worse than human special forces having fun was them starting a trend. And they always started trends. Why risk it? In the heart of a classified human special forces training facility, the air buzzed with barely contained excitement. "Sir, you won't believe this," a lieutenant exclaimed, eyes wide with astonishment. "The quantum engineers are begging for advanced courses in what they're calling probability-enhanced breakdancing. Can you imagine them trying to spin on their circuits?" His voice was a mix of disbelief and barely suppressed laughter, as if the universe had just played the ultimate prank. The commanding officer leaned back, a sly grin spreading across his face. "Approved. But tell those gearheads their spin moves need more pizzazz. We can't have them out dancing us with half-hearted twirls." His tone was playful but firm, like a coach pushing his team to greatness. Who'd have thought dance would become a battlefield? "Yes, sir." The lieutenant snapped to attention, then hesitated, a spark of curiosity in his eyes. "Should I add tactical choreography to the standard training curriculum? I mean, are we really going all in on this dance combat craze?" His voice trembled with a mix of excitement and incredulity. "Better make it mandatory," the officer declared, his voice booming with conviction. "We can't let our operators fall behind in this dance combat arms race we accidentally kicked off." Can you picture us getting shown up by a bunch of rhythm-obsessed aliens? The idea alone was absurd, and his laughter filled the room, infectious and bold. The lieutenant's jaw dropped, but he pressed on. Sir, about that, get this. Several other species are requesting training in rhythm-based warfare. What's happening out there? His voice rose, a mix of awe and nervous energy, as if the galaxy was rewriting its rules just to keep up with humans. The officer's eyes gleamed with mischief. Well, you know what they say, Lieutenant. He paused for effect, letting the tension build. What's that, sir? The lieutenant asked, leaning in, hanging on every word. The groove must flow, the officer roared, slamming his fist on the desk for emphasis. The room erupted in laughter, so loud it seemed to shake the walls, and, believe it or not, nearby quantum probability matrices started rewriting themselves to include dance moves, as if the universe itself was joining the party. Just another wild day in human special forces. Why wouldn't they laugh? Meanwhile, in the dimly lit mercenary lounge of Station 7 Echo, the mood was anything but festive. I swear by all quantum probabilities, the veteran Dravik commander bellowed, their crystalline form vibrating with raw, barely contained emotion. This is the last time I underestimate human social protocols. How do they keep pulling this off? Their voice was a mix of exasperation and grudging respect, their crystals flickering like a storm about to break. The lounge had become an unofficial support group for those scarred by encounters with human special forces, and today it was packed, every seat filled with battle-hardened mercenaries nursing their wounds, mostly to their pride. Let me guess, Sal chittered, his mandibles twitching as he pulled up his ever-growing database of human absurdities. You ran into their new diplomatic integration specialists, didn't you? What kind of chaos did they unleash this time? His voice was laced with dread, as if he already knew the answer would haunt him. The Dravik's crystals flickered, a telltale sign of what might have been PTSD. Is that what they're calling them now? They asked, their voice heavy with disbelief. We called them the T-Team. Can you believe we fell for it? The words landed like a bombshell, and a ripple of understanding swept through the room. Even the station's cleaning drones seemed to freeze, as if offering a moment of sympathy. Oh no. Zixvak's antennae curled inward, his voice a horrified whisper. You got the full British specialty service treatment, didn't you? How do you even survive that? His tone was equal parts pity and morbid curiosity, his eyes wide with anticipation. The Dravik's crystals chimed, confirming the worst. We thought we had them cornered, they recounted, their voice trembling with the memory. Our forces had their position in the diplomatic quarter surrounded. We demanded their surrender. And then, can you guess what they did? They invited us in for tea. Tea. In the middle of a standoff. Their crystals flared, reflecting their shock and lingering embarrassment. Classic BSDS move. Sal nodded sagely, his mandibles clicking as he brought up the footage. Show us what happened. How bad was it? His voice was steady, but his antennae betrayed a flicker of fear, as if he wasn't sure he wanted to know. The holoscreen flickered to life, revealing what started as a textbook urban containment op, until the humans unleashed what they gleefully called tactical hospitality. The footage showed operators in full combat gear, weapons still hot, meticulously setting up a tea service in the heart of a war zone. I say, chaps, these fellows seem awfully tense. One voice chirped, calm as you please. Jenkins, break out the Earl Grey. The combat blend, sir? Jenkins replied, his tone almost reverent. Of course. And don't forget the proper china. We're not savages. They even had doilies. Can you imagine the audacity? At first, we thought it was a trick, the Dravik commander continued, their crystals chiming with distress. Some sneaky, new psychological warfare. But then they started debating how to hold a teacup while wearing powered armor. Who does that? Their voice rose, incredulous, as the memory flooded back. The footage captured it perfectly. Remember, everyone, pinky out. It's in the manual, one operator instructed, as if etiquette was as critical as ammo. Sir, which manual is that, exactly? Another asked, half laughing. Advanced Combat Etiquette, Chapter 3. Tea Time Tactics, came the reply, delivered with such confidence it left the Dravik forces dumbfounded, watching in confusion as humans debated tea blends while maintaining perfect combat readiness. How do they stay so calm under pressure? But that's not even the worst part. The commander's crystals rang out, their tone bordering on panic. They had scones, combat-grade scones, fresh from some portable oven. Who brings baked goods to a firefight? Their voice was a mix of awe and horror, as if the scones were the true weapon. With tactical clotted cream? Zixvac asked, his voice dripping with sympathy, though his antennae twitched with curiosity. You bet, the commander confirmed, their crystals dimming. They insisted there was a proper way to apply it. They gave us a whole briefing, called it Operation Jam First. Can you believe they turned a military op into a baking seminar? Their voice cracked, the memory too much to bear. Sal's mandibles clicked in recognition. Oh, you got the full Cornwall versus Devon tactical doctrine showdown. How do they even think of this stuff? His tone was a mix of amusement and dread as he gestured at the screen. The footage showed human operators in a heated debate about scone prep, all while casually disarming explosives and holding defensive positions. With all due respect, sir, the Devon method gives better tactical coverage, one argued, dodging a laser blast. That's borderline insubordination, Jenkins, the leader shot back. Everyone knows Jam First is superior. Maybe we should check the Queen's Royal Combat Catering Corps manual, another chimed in, as if consulting a rulebook mid-battle was normal. Who writes a manual for that? They had an actual manual for this, a Quantum Hive rep buzzed, their disbelief echoing through the lounge. Are you serious? Oh, they've got manuals for everything. Sal explained, his voice heavy with resignation. This one's called Tactical Tea Service, a comprehensive guide to combat catering. It's got sections on emergency doily deployment and proper pinky positioning under fire. Can you even wrap your head around that? His antennae drooped, overwhelmed by the absurdity. The footage rolled on, showing Dravik forces slowly succumbing to what the humans called aggressive hospitality. Crystalline warriors, built for war, were awkwardly trying to hold teacups with their energy manipulators, looking like fish out of water. They insisted on proper introductions, the commander recounted, their crystals flickering with the memory. Full titles, unit designations, even our preferred tea varieties. They had dossiers on our tea tastes. How do they even know that? Their voice was a mix of admiration and unease. That's their intelligence division at work. Zixvac noted, his voice low and wary. I heard they've got a whole department for tactical social engineering. Who does that? His antennae curled tighter, as if shielding himself from the thought. The footage showed humans performing synchronized tea service with military precision, pouring tea like it was a drill. They developed protocols for every social scenario, even combat tea etiquette for different species. Jenkins, the Dravik commander's crystals look dull, one operator called out. Offer them the special blend. The classified one, sir? Jenkins asked, his tone hushed. You bet. And keep the serving temp perfect for crystalline life forms. We're not barbarians. The care they took was almost insulting in its perfection. Why are they so good at this? Within 3 hours, the Dravik commander recalled, their voice resigned. They turned our containment op into a proper afternoon tactical tea session. They had discussion groups on scone prep techniques. How do you go from a standoff to that? Their crystals chimed softly, a mix of defeat and reluctant awe. Did you actually drink the tea? Sal asked, his voice careful, as if he feared the answer. Of course we did, the commander admitted, their crystals brightening slightly. They had blends optimized for crystalline biology. Do you know how rare that is? They called it their special force selection, said it was a secret of their combat culinary corps. Who thinks of that? Their voice was a mix of wonder and frustration. The footage showed the aftermath, Dravik and human forces in a civilized discussion about tea protocols, all while staying combat ready. Some crystalline warriors had tweaked their energy fields to better grip the tiny cups, looking oddly proud of their new skill. By the end of the day, the commander's side, we'd signed 3 trade agreements, set up a cultural exchange, and agreed to monthly tea ceremonies. They called it Operation Steep and Keep, building better relations through superior tea service. Can you believe we fell for it? Their crystals dimmed, the weight of defeat settling in. And the scone dispute? Zixvac asked, his voice cautious but curious. Still ongoing. The commander replied, their tone exasperated. They've got a joint human-Dravik research committee studying topping sequences. The humans call it the Strategic Scone Initiative. Why can't they just fight like normal people? Their crystals flared, reflecting their frustration. The mercenaries watched, stunned, as the footage showed the Epsilon sector's new reality. Regular tea ceremonies between human and Dravic forces, complete with tactical doily deployment, and heated debates over scone prep. They've started certification courses, the commander added, their voice heavy. Something called Advanced Combat Hospitality. The humans are training our troops in tactical politeness. How do we even respond to that? Their crystals chimed with resignation. This is why I'm done with human contracts, Sal declared, his mandibles clicking furiously. Who looks at a military standoff and thinks, you know what this needs? Perfectly served tea and a scone debate? His voice was a mix of exasperation and grudging respect. But it worked, a mercenary pointed out, their voice tinged with reluctant awe. That's the problem. Sal snapped. Everything they do works. They turned a combat op into a social event, and now we've got joint training in tea service. Can you even process that? His antennae drooped, defeated. The lounge fell silent, the distant clink of china from the human quarter sending chills down spines. Mercenaries quietly adjusted their gear, some adding emergency hospitality kits to their loadouts, just in case. Later, Sal updated the guild's advisories, his claws trembling. If human special forces offer you tea, take it. Their hospitality is as deadly precise as their combat, and refusing might trigger aggressive tea deployment. The advisory passed before the tea cooled. Because one thing was clear, the only thing scarier than human special forces fighting was them being polite. And they were always polite. Why risk it? Back at the human training facility, the laughter had barely died down when the lieutenant spoke up. Sir, the Dravic are requesting advanced courses in tactical etiquette. Can you believe they're all in on this? His voice was a mix of amusement and disbelief. Approved, the officer replied, grinning. But tell them their doily deployment needs work. We can't have sloppy presentation. His tone was mock stern, but his eyes sparkled with pride. Yes, sir, the lieutenant nodded. Should I add Combat Catering 101 to the standard curriculum? Are we really making this official? Make it mandatory, the officer declared. We can't have our operators serving tea without tactical finesse. Can you imagine the embarrassment? His laughter boomed, filling the room. Sir, about that, several other species are requesting training in advanced hospitality warfare, the lieutenant added, his voice rising with excitement. What's the galaxy coming to? Well, you know what they say, Lieutenant, the officer replied, his grin widening. What's that, sir? The lieutenant asked, already chuckling. The tea must flow, the officer roared, and the room exploded in laughter, so loud it made nearby tea sets rattle in sympathy. Just another day in human special forces. Why wouldn't they keep pushing the galaxy's limits? Oh, I love the wild, unapologetic spirit of these human special forces. Their lifestyle, blending high-stakes combat with dance battles, tea parties, and a relentless zest for fun, screams a bold rejection of dull conformity. It's like they're shouting, why be boring when you can be epic? This resonates deeply with me. Life's too short to play it safe or stick to rigid rules. Their ability to turn war zones into stages for creativity, humor, and even hospitality shows a fearless embrace of chaos that's both inspiring and a little terrifying. Who wouldn't want to live with that kind of audacity? Socially, their approach is a masterclass in connection over conflict. Offering tea to enemies? Teaching aliens to breakdance? That's not just tactics. It's a radical belief in shared humanity or, well, sentience. It makes me think we could all learn to defuse tension with a bit of charm and absurdity. Why fight when you can bond over scones or a sick beat? But here's the kicker. Their success proves that joy and competence aren't mutually exclusive. Society often demands we choose between seriousness and fun, but these folks flip that on its head, and I'm here for it. The only issue that nags at me is the galaxy's fear of their unpredictability. It's a reminder that true originality can be isolating. Others might not get it or might even run scared. But honestly, that's their loss. I say, let's all take a page from these humans. Live boldly, connect creatively, and never apologize for having a blast. The groove must flow, and I'm ready to dance to that tune.